the Three's a Crowd podcast with William Farino, Giuseppe Tedeschi, and me, Daniel Hallis. Today, we're going to be talking about the recent U.S. election and the financial chaos that hit the Kamala Harris campaign. In this case study on how a $1 billion campaign ended up to $20 million in debt, we've got a lot to cover.
220 or just 20?
$20 million in debt.
Come on, Dan.
So let's cover this and dive right in. But before we get into it, let's give a quick thank you to our sponsors.
Drum roll, please.
Avocados from Mexico. They're perfect for making guacamole, spreading on toast, or even as a healthy snack for your pet chinchilla. Grab them at your local grocery store now. Giuseppe, why don't you kick things off for us?
Thanks, Dan. All right, so the Democratic Party raised over $1 billion for Kamala Harris's campaign.
$1 billion?
Yep, $1
B,
billion.
baby.
Woo!
1B. Making it one of the most well-funded in U.S. political history. Yet, despite this incredible budget, they ended up $20 million in debt.
Jeez.
It's hard to imagine how a campaign with such vast resources could mismanage its funds so badly. It's not just about the money they raise, it's about how they chose to spend it.
I mean, frankly, it's unbelievable what just happened.
It is.
They had what seems like a financial gold mine.
I agree with that, a gold mine.
It's like walking to a store and all you see is avocados and chinchillas. It is a gold mine. But they turned it into a disaster. The big question is, where did all that money go? How did they burn through $1 billion and still come up short? We're going to talk about the unprecedented level of fundraising, yet it was squandered. $1 billion budget should have been giving them a significant edge, but instead, it created a false sense of security and a loss in the presidential election.
That's exactly it, Farino. It's like they were operating under the assumption that more money would automatically solve all of their problems. But in reality, without a strategic plan or how to allocate those funds efficiently, even $1 billion can disappear quickly. This raises serious concerns about Harris's ability to handle financial management on a larger scale. If she could control her campaign, spending and prioritizing effectively, what does that say about her capability to manage the national economy? If she can't manage her own money, how can she manage everyone else's money?
And, that's why she lost.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, Dan, it's a good point. So, think about it. Managing a political campaign is almost like running a business. You have to have a budget, stakeholders, in this case, it would be
Donors.
Yeah.
and a set of objectives you need to achieve. So, when you mismanage the budget at this scale, it's not just a mistake, it's a fundamental failure in financial leadership.
That's absolutely correct, Seth. A well-funded campaign should operate with a clear financial strategy where every dollar is spent carefully, considered, and justified. The fact that they ended up in debt despite raising over $1 billion shows a complete lack of oversight. They spent aggressively without assessing the long-term impact of their long-term impact. Almost as if they believed they had an endless supply of cash.
You know what? I feel like it also suggests that they didn't have a strong financial advisory team.
No.
Most successful campaigns work closely with financial planners to ensure that their spending aligns with their goals. Here, it seems like there was a disconnect between the fundraising team and the campaign financial managers. They raised an enormous amount of money, but failed to manage it effectively. It isn't just about overspending, though. It's about not understanding the limits of their own resources.
Exactly. It's almost like they got caught up in the hype of having such a big budget. Instead of making careful, data-driven decisions, they spent lavishly on high-profile events, celebrities, endorsements, and expensive aid slots.
Ad
Think-
slots, I think that's what it is.
Yeah, my bad. Slots. Thinking it would give them an edge, but in reality, it created an illusion of progress while draining their resources.
And that's right. They focus on the optics of spending big and making a splash, rather than considering the long-term financial health of the campaign. It's a classic example of mistaking visuals for effectiveness. Just because you spend more doesn't mean you're making better decisions.
Yes.
They fell into a trap of equating high spending with guaranteed success,
Yeah.
which is a dangerous assumption, especially in a political campaign.
And I completely agree with that. And this is the financial mismanagement becomes even more concerning. It's not just about losing the money, right? It's about the percent in sets. If a candidate can't manage their own campaign finances, it raises a lot of red flags about how they might handle the taxpayers' money. If elected, it's a credible issue. When you show donors and voters that you can't control your budget, it's hard to convince them that you're capable of making sound financial decisions on a national level that affects them. How can they trust you?
Yeah, so basically, it's like a company CEO who burns through investment capital without a clear business plan. Investors would lose confidence quickly. In this case, the investors are the donors who expected their contributions to be used wisely. Instead, they saw a campaign that ran out of funds and fell into debt despite the unprecedented fundraising.
Exactly what I've been saying. It all comes down to trust. Donors want to believe that their money is being used effectively to support a winning campaign. When they see mismanagement at this scale, it undermines the trust. It's a serious issue that could affect Harris's political capital and her ability to raise funds in the future.
And I mean, those donors aren't the guys you want to annoy, right?
Yeah.
Oprah. Who else is donating? Oprah. That one guy from Shark Tank.
Yeah, just a lot of big billionaires.
Lots of high.
Cuban. That's
Mark
what it was.
Cuban,
Sorry,
yeah,
Cuban.
just a lot of high-profile people.
Daniel
Yeah.
West.
High-profile, you know.
Anyways, G.
Well,
Keep us going.
Can we talk about the
I'll,
necessities versus luxuries?
Yeah, no problem. So, one of the first red flags that was their spending priorities. Instead of focusing on what was necessary, they splurged on luxuries. A great example of this is the $20 million spent on celebrity endorsements. While it might seem impressive to have big names supporting your campaign, it is actually a luxury, not a necessity.
I mean, that's what I've been saying. It's like spending money on designer clothes when you need a winter jacket. It makes you look good, but it doesn't serve a practical purpose.
I agree with that.
So research has shown that celebrity endorsements rarely have significant impact on voter behavior anyways, especially when the celebrities don't have strong political presence or connections with the voters. I mean, what's Megan Thee Stallion doing up on stage?
And exactly. And it ties into an important economic principle. When you have a limited budget, even if it's $1 billion, you need to focus on necessities over luxuries, whatever those might be. The campaign was wasted on a huge portion of their funds on things that didn't help them win votes, like high-priced endorsements and expensive ad slots during primetime TV.
Plus, it creates a disconnect with the voters. Harris' campaign tries to brand itself as grassroots, but their spending showed a different story. When voters see a candidate spending millions on celebrities rather than focusing on policy issues that matter, it sends the wrong message.
Completely agree. But on that note, let's pivot and dive into the concepts of elastic and inelastic supply and demand.
It's
Because
important.
this it is important. This played a huge role in their financial downfall. The campaign assumed that by increasing their spending on ads and promotions, voters' engagement would increase. That's an elastic expectation.
Exactly. They treated the spending as if it would yield a direct and consistent return. But in reality, the voter response was inelastic. After a certain point, no matter how much more they spent on advertising, the engagement didn't increase. It's like trying to stretch a rubber band that has already reached its limit. It just won't go any further.
Oh, for sure.
It's a great way to put it.
On the flip side, their revenue, mainly through, donations, became inelastic as well. They kept going back to the same donor base. Danny, give me more money.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. It didn't diversify their fundraising efforts, and as a result, they squeezed the same source dry without bringing in new ones.
I agree. This mismatch, it's elasticity between their spending and revenue generation was a receipt for financial disaster. It was always going to be a disaster. They assumed that by spending more, they could generate more voter support and donations. But when that didn't happen, they were left with a huge deficit.
For sure.
So, you want me to bring you guys into the law of diminishing returns?
Yeah, tell us
Explain
about
to us,
it.
G.
Tell us about it.
All right. So basically, this leads us right into another key concept: the law of diminishing return. The law of diminishing return. So, at the start of the campaign, their spending on ads, rallies, and staff likely boosted their visibility and engagement.
For
But-
sure. It was,
but-
it was known as one of the best presidential campaigns to start, no?
Yeah,
That's true, it
fully.
was.
I'd
was.
say so.
But basically, as they continued pouring more money into the same areas, the returns started to shrink.
Oh, for sure. It's a textbook example of diminishing returns. I'm glad G brings up this point because early on, each dollar spent brought significant increase to voters.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing the right things. They were in the right direction. But after reaching a certain threshold, additional spending didn't have the same impact. It's like overwatering a plant. It might help at first, but at a certain point, it just drowns the root. Danny, it's like what your nana always said. When life gives you lemons, keep them and save them for a rainy day because some people will get tired of it and it'll diminish.
Whoa.
Two great analogies.
Whoa.
The Harris campaign failed to recognize when they hit the point of diminishing returns. Instead of relocating their budget to more effective strategies, they doubled down the same tactics, hoping for different outcome. It's a classic case of throwing good money after bad. It's just following the wrong thing.
I mean, it's just like chasing a loss at the casino. It's just never going to work out for you.
It's exactly.
And this wasn't just limited to advertising. The same principle applied to their staffing decisions. They hired a huge number of consultants and advisors, thinking it would give them an edge. But beyond a certain point, having more people on payroll didn't add value. It was just added cost.
Wow. Never thought of it that way. But, Dan, you want to shift gears?
Yeah, why don't we shift gears and talk about the implicit costs, because they played a huge role in the campaign's financial mismanagement. Frino, can you do me? I know you know a lot of this stuff. You're good with this stuff. Can you break this down for us?
I got
Can
it.
you break this down for all of us?
Don't worry. I don't worry. If the explicit costs are the direct, visible expenses like advertising, travel, and salaries. These are the line items you see in a financial report. The campaign spends heavily on these areas, and it's easy to see how these costs can add up quickly, especially when they're paying, again, as we've said before, for prime-time TV ads and high-profile rallies. But G, break down some implicit costs for us.
Alright, so basically, we then have implicit costs, which are often overlooked, but can be just as damaging. These are the opportunity costs, the benefits they missed out on by choosing one strategy over another. For example, by focusing so heavily on celebrity endorsements and traditional media, they missed the chance to invest in digital outreach and grassroots organizations, which could have been more effective in today's political climate.
For sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. The implicit costs also include the damages to their reputation when donors see that their money isn't being used wisely, right? It creates a trust issue. It's harder to raise funds in the future if people don't believe that their contributions are making a difference. This kind of long-term impact is often underestimated, but really, I believe it can be devastating.
Yeah, no, it's just short-term thinking. That's all it is. That's all there is to it. That's just a classic case of short-term thinking. They were so focused on making that big splash that we've been talking about that they didn't consider the long-term effects of their spending choices.
So, to wrap this up, the Harris campaign financial collapse was a result of poor prioritization, a misunderstanding of voter behavior, a failure to adapt to changing conditions. They confused luxuries for necessities, misunderstood the elasticity of voter engagement, ignored the law of diminishing return, and didn't account for implicable costs.
A perfect example of why strategic financial planning is crucial, especially in high-stakes situations like political campaigns, even with a huge budget. If you don't allocate your resources wisely, you can end up in serious trouble.
Serious. It's well said, Dan. It's well said.
Oh.
It's a lesson to the importance of data-driven decision-making, especially in something so crucial as the political campaign.
And that's a wrap.
That's
for today's
it.
episode.
Thank you. That's Three's a Crowd for this week. We'll see you next week.
Make sure to like, subscribe, and get your avocados from Mexico.
Avocados from Mexico.
How many minutes was that?
15 on the nose.
Wow, that was long.
That was good though. Like
Was it good?
when we messed up, like there was one time where I lost the page completely. The implicit, explicit.
I took like a 3 second, like 3 or 4.
Honestly, when we
second
mess up
pause.
though, it's like
I
it's
didn't-
natural.
Yeah, it looks better.
I just want to see like I want to see the video, see like how we, because if we look